Thank you, pros, for being here.
We are recording. Yeah, go for it.
All right, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our second annual ProTips panel, where we hope to equip and inspire competitors or those who are considering competing with knowledge from the shared experience of seasoned competitors and judges. Competition can have such a dualistic meaning. On one hand, it can almost become combative, pitting one against another. But on the other, competition can be a catalyst for personal and professional growth. And from a brand new competitor to a seasoned competitor to those who have placed, to those who have judged, the spirit of competition does not outgrow one's tenure. It remains a way to push potential year after year. And we're eager to host this event to share tips from some of the most practiced pros in the industry. Without further ado, I'm going to pass things off to Ben, who is going to be our moderator for questions. And then we're going to have all of our guests introduce themselves and answer the first question. Thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. So yeah, let's dive right in. I'm just going to go down my list of our wonderful panelists here. If you could introduce yourselves, and just so you know, Sam, I'm going to make you go first. If you could introduce yourselves and then answer our first question from Cassie in Dallas, which is, how did you get your start in competition? So go ahead, take it away, Sam.
Hi, my name is Sam Spillman, and I'm super excited to be here today, so thank you so much. I'm head of training and development for Delano's Coffee Roasters, and I'm the current US Barista Champion, reigning US Barista Champion. And I started with competition. I'm just a competitive person, so I've been competing my whole life for everything. But when I got into coffee, my head trainer at the time, she really pushed me and encouraged me to do competition. And that was Layla Gambari. And that's how I got started.
That's great. T.Ben, you want to go next?
Hey, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Excellent. I'm T.Ben, and I am an educator and cafe consultant for Tradecraft Outfitters, and also the creator of LitterCat. I've placed in the finals the last 2 years of US Barista Championship. And I got started in coffee, honestly, really similar to Sam Spillman, except Layla Gambari wasn't my head trainer. It was someone else. They wanted some competitors, and I like being on stage.
And you're very good at it.
Thanks.
Adam, how about you go next?
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, sure can.
All right, dope. My name is Adam JacksonBey. I'm a coffee professional based in Washington, D.C. I got into competition because I'm a competitive person, and I was kind of lost in my coffee career and wanted something to give me a greater challenge, and so I decided to start competing.
Sweet. Want to pass it over to Kaley since she's right there?
Hi, I'm Kaley Gann. I'm the general manager for Ceremony Coffee in Baltimore. I'm the current reigning US Brewers Cup champion. I got into competition a few years ago, and I wanted to compete just because I hate myself. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, no. I like to never stay stagnant, like to try new things, so it's definitely very new. And I'm currently coaching this year. I'm not competing, so I'll be coaching some Glitter Cats and a couple other competitors.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you, guys. Thanks, DC. Sarah, how about you next?
Can y'all hear me?
Sure can.
My name's Sarah. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a stage manager for the Brewers Cup competition, and I'm also the chair for the Brewers Cup committee in the US. I got my start volunteering because I couldn't afford to get into Expo without volunteerships. And everything I saw on the competition stage made me really mad. So I kept volunteering to make things to a point where it did make me mad. And I have never competed or judged, I've only volunteered.
And you're very good at it, and everyone loves you. Kathy, how about you next?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can.
Awesome. My name is Kathy. I live in Dallas, Texas. I work as a regional manager for Counterculture Coffee here. I got my start in competitions because Sarah told me I was good at it. And so I followed her around that year to all the qualifiers. I work on the Brewers Cup committee, and I'm a head judge for Brewers Cup, and I got certified for Worlds last year, which was really cool. So we're really looking forward to the rest of this year.
Awesome, thanks. Andrea, how about you go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Allen. I'm one of the owners of Onyx Coffee Lab. Longtime barista competitor, super excited about the season coming up. I got started, my husband showed me a live stream of a competition. He was like, hey, you should do this. And I was like, that's stupid. I don't need to prove anything. And then here I am decades later, still trying not to prove anything. No, I'm just kidding. I went and I just loved it. It was fun. Loved the atmosphere. And yeah, so that's how I got here.
Awesome. And then last but not least, Mike Strumpf.
Hello. As Ben said, my name is Mike Strumpf. I'm the director of coffee at Swiss Water Decaf. I started in competitions as a competitor and barista. I'm not a particularly competitive person, I don't think. I got into competitions more to develop myself professionally, and I've stayed involved in the competitions for that purpose. And year after year, I still get to grow. I work now in the judging realm. I just oversee judges and help train judges so that they can help develop competitors.
That's great. All right, so let's dive into some questions. What do you guys say? So we got a good first question here. These will be for the baristas and brewers competitors. So I'll kind of let I'll maybe call on Sam first. But the question is, how do you decide? And this is from some folks in Chicago. How do you decide which coffee that you're going to use for competition?
That's a really good question. I would say you want to choose a coffee that speaks to you, that gets you excited. With that, having a coffee that has a large target of flavors is really important. Something where the flavors are super identifiable. And yeah, but like at the end of the day, the coffee should be, it should get you excited. Like you're presenting that coffee, you get to share that coffee with 4 judges who are tasting, and you want to be excited about it. Yeah.
That's awesome. T.Ben, same question for you.
I'm pretty much mirror what Sam said. If you're excited about it, if you have a story you can share with it. From like a taste standpoint, I always look for like sweetness. I love sugar, so like I just try to find the sweetest coffee and one that I want to present. And then like if you do have time to like play with dialing it in before you select it, or like brewing it a few ways, the wider range of error that you have in the coffee. So if it tastes good, within a 4 or 5 second range on espresso, or you have like a 15 to 20 second range that still tastes good, the better, because chances are there's a high probability something won't go as planned when you're on stage. So if you can find a coffee that works well in that range of error, I always find that has helped me in the past. But be excited about it.
That's great. Andrea, how about you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I always choose, basically we just like roll out every coffee that we can find in our roastery that we think is exciting and fun, and we just cup them and decide which one we like the best. And so that usually ends up being something that's really complex in its flavor, that has something new or different to offer that maybe I haven't experienced before. And so that's usually all of my competition coffee decisions just start at the cupping table, and then we just go from there.
Awesome. And then I'm going to ask Adam, and then I want to hear Kaley's thoughts from a Brewers Cup perspective as well.
I just pick whichever P&G counterculture has. Okay, that's not totally true. I tend to find a coffee that I fall in love with. Last year, it was Ngara from Kenya, so it wasn't a P&G, so that was a lie. I'm sorry. But I find a coffee that I can tell a story about and I can kind of thematically work with really well, and a coffee that I just really enjoy.
Awesome. I want to hear Kaley's thoughts for Brewers Cup.
So when I choose a coffee, I always want to choose something I'm really excited about and that I can connect with, and that possibly has a good story that would help with my speech and synergy. But also at the same time being really strategic about it. Like Sam said, easily pinpointed flavor notes. If you feel like you can go through your score sheet and be able to identify each of those easily, and something that's really complex, juicy, sweet, and you.
Awesome. That's great. I'm going to flip that question for our judges that are with us. So let's start with Kathy. As a judge, what are some things that you look for in coffees that you're judging?
I think balance is huge, and especially from hot to cool, which is something I think all the competitors know really well. But that it has that sweetness and that complexity as soon as we get to the cup. And then at the end, before we leave the stage, or when we take our final taste, before we make our final score, that it still tastes just as beautiful as it did the first time. That is really important in a coffee.
Awesome. Mike, what about in the barista world?
The most points on the score sheets are around the flavor of the coffee and around the balance of the coffee. So I want a coffee that is well balanced. Also, having something that you can describe is very important. So sometimes coffees are very, very complex and hard to describe. And sometimes they're very simple and easy to describe. And so you have to balance that in as well. Once you find your balanced coffee, something that you can really control and describe to the judges is great.
That's great. Mike, I'm going to stick with you for a second. A nice straightforward question from Cassie in Dallas. How much time do you have to dial in for a barista competition? And I know that changes a little bit depending on which competition you're talking about.
Yes, you answered most of the question for me. I don't actually know. Someone like T.Ben would be a better answer for the qualifiers. I know for the US Championships, there's 15 minutes of preparation time before you compete, in which you can work on dialing in your coffee, but you'll also get a practice time that's outside of those 15 minutes, and that does depend on each competition, and it's dependent on how much time the organizer has. So I don't know what the times are for the qualifiers. Does anyone else?
T.Ben, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I'm going to start this with all of that is listed in the rules and regulations and in the email sent out with your schedule. So that is something to really, really deep dive, read the rules and regulations every single year twice. I've done that every year. There are little things you'll pick up and find those answers. I believe for qualifiers, typically it's 20-minute practice time, and then you have a 7-minute setup time before your presentation. Actually, Andrea might be, you're competing this year. You're a Sam.
I don't know.
I'm looking it up right now. I honestly don't know.
T.Ben brings up an excellent point, though. Read those rules and regulations. Those are your friend. Oh, Sarah's hand's raised. What's up?
I would just like to reiterate T.Ben's note of please read the rules and read the emails. For Sumner, which is the first qualifier we have coming up, because it's a smaller venue, we'll likely have 20 minutes allocated for practice time, but that would be information that would be confirmed in the email you get the 2 weeks leading up into the event. And then for Nashville, it will probably be 20 to 30 minutes. So it's largely venue dependent. If we have the power and the space to allow for, X amount of practice time for every competitor, that's great. But we try to make sure we prioritize uniformity so everyone gets the same access to the stage. But that's going to be in the emails that you receive leading up into the event.
That's great.
Sorry, real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Setup time is 7 minutes and practice time is 20 minutes for qualifiers.
Boom. Sweet. Here's a fun question. This is from Bailey of Boston. For those of you guys who compete every year, what are your reasons for doing so besides winning? So I'm going to start with Andrea on this one.
That's a great question. Thank you. For me, it's multiple fold. Part of it is that I really want to continue to promote like my family's business and just like help continue to contribute to specialty coffee. There's an awesome conversation happening around coffee in general, but specialty specifically. And a lot of those conversations start at competition. And so for me, like I want to be involved in that. I love the community of competition as well. I met T.Ben. I think both of our first competitions really fun. Consider him a great friend. And it's just, I don't know, for me, there's something really special about going through that kind of like stress, excitement, elatement, disappointment, all of those things with a crew of people. And I like it. It's fun.
That's great. T.Ben, what about you?
I think like when I started in coffee, it like competition is what hooked me, and being able to push myself in both a personal and professional way. Every year I learned more about how to care for myself in stressful situations, how to care for others, and kind of like there's a special community that's formed, and these people that we get to polish wares with in the back room. Andrea and I were like table neighbors for a couple of years, and she like took off, and I took a while to catch back up. But I'm actually not competing this year, and focusing on growing Glitter Cat and giving that platform to other people. And my main reason for doing that is I feel that I was given a platform, I've had a voice, I've had stories I wanted to share, and this year I don't have anything I'm passionate about speaking about. I don't have this journey I want to present, but I think there's a lot of other journeys that we need to be listening to. So I'm taking a step back this year. And not forever, but this year I'm taking off.
Cool, that's great. Kaley, what about you?
I competed for 3 years, and my first year I didn't do really well, but I was so excited to get feedback from the judges that I just started chomping at the bit to get back to it. So it was like a competition with myself and others, obviously, but I really felt it helped me grow as both a person and a coffee professional. So personally, it was really great for me. But at the same time, the community is so fun and welcoming. Like Andrea said, you're going through a lot with a lot of people, and you're all in the same boat, and you just develop really great connections along the way. That's why
Awesome.
I compete.
That's great. I would love to hear from Adam too, another veteran barista competitor.
I said earlier today that this is my 4th and final cycle competing, mostly because like competition takes a lot of time and effort and money, and it's extremely stressful. But I love every minute of it. But the major reason why I've competed for so long is that there's not too many black folks competing, and you can't really. And I think it's important for me to be like a role model, which I legitimately hate saying, for other people in the industry that look like me and don't see people that look like them on that stage. So like that's the major reason why I'm competing this last year.
That's real. That's great. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, for sure. I think I keep going back to competition because, one, I love the challenge of it. I've never done anything so challenging as competition. And I think that it's just because I care about it so much. Like, I care about the coffee industry. I care about the people that are part of it. And I feel like competition is just a way to just hear people's voices and what they have to say in the industry. I'm competing again this year, which sometimes I'm like, why the heck am I doing this? Actually, a lot of the time. But I feel like this last year, I really found my voice and who I am as a person and what I want to communicate and what's important to me. And I just feel like I have one more thing to say before I'm done. But I feel like there's just nothing better than doing competition to create relationships and really challenge yourself and see how we can work together as competitors to grow this industry and really bring new ideas to the table and really advocate for people.
That's awesome. That's great. All right, I got some questions for the judges. So we'll go Kathy and then Mike. So the first question is, the question for both of you guys is, what is the difference between US and world judging? We'll do Kathy first.
Great. This was my first time judging at Worlds, and so I feel like it was a big adjustment. Not necessarily in a bad way, but in a different way, that when you're surrounded by different cultures and the most experienced judges in the room had, I'd never tasted coffees that they drink regularly. And those were the coffees that were coming to us on stage. And so it was getting calibrated very quickly and like learning to communicate with people whose first language is not English, and to talk about flavor and like these really, idiosyncratic things like was a really big challenge. And I think it is really important to continue bringing that experience to US. So maybe that's the biggest difference for me. It's just the calibration between the two. And obviously Mike is a much better voice for this. He's a world head judge, so I'll let him answer more.
I totally agree. One of the real big things is that language difference, and you need to be able to understand what the competitors from around the world are trying to say in such a short amount of time. And it really emphasizes to me how little time there is on stage to get across what you're trying to say and how precise you have to be. And then echoing again, if competitors can bring that back to the US and present something that's so easy to understand that anybody can get it, even if English isn't their first language, they'll do very well with native English speakers. The other thing that's always humbling to me about judging in the World Championships is similar to all the competitors being the best in their country. These are the best people in the world at judging these competitions. And we all think we're right about everything, but nobody's right about anything. And it always reminds me that there's a room to grow and things to learn.
Awesome. That's great. All right, another question or set of questions here for the competitors. So the question is, what are some mistakes, this is from Emma, what are some mistakes people have made? What did you do? And then what did you do to address it in the moment? So let's start with, I'm gonna start with T.Ben, if that's cool.
One of my biggest mistakes overall, just as like in competition seasons was never taking time for myself. Like taking days off from competition and from work, like reserving, if you can, like one full day of rest. Eating food, like even though you don't want to. My coach, Holly Baston, she really, really drove home self-care. Like we're people first and competitors second. And I that helped my competition so much, was to take a step back. From like an in-presentation moment, there was a time I spilled a cappuccino on the judge in the semifinal because I was shaking. So cleaned it up, apologized, wiped it up, and just kind of kept going like you were in a normal cafe. Like if you spill a thing on a guest, staying calm and cleaning it up. And then the next two caps, I just had the cup on the table and poured, and I'm like, I'm not gonna shake. And I took that skill with me the next year, had boxes, so I could always have my hands way more steady by pouring with the cup on the table. That's kind of two of the big things that I've worked with. You don't need to pour in the air. We're shaking. I'm terrified. So pour on the table.
Sam, what about you?
Yeah, I think there's so many. So I would say for US this year, I was so shaky. I remember watching my cappuccino as I was handing it out, and the milk bounced an inch out of the cup and fell back in, and I got very lucky. But in preparation for Worlds, how I kind of helped with it, it didn't knock it out completely, was I had my husband and my coach screaming in my face while I was pouring cappuccinos and trying to knock the cup out of my hand. Anything, picture Kyle Ramage and my husband just in my face while I was pouring cappuccinos, and that helped a little bit. You're not going to be able to cancel out nerves completely, or maybe you can and you're a miracle person, but really diving into the weak points that you're not the greatest at. So being honest with yourself and knowing for myself in that instance, okay, I'm going to shake a lot. I need to figure this out. Yeah.
That's great. Your husband and Kyle screaming at you sounds pretty intense, but I would love to see a video of that. That sounds amazing. Andrea, what about you?
Yeah, I've made lots of really random and funny mistakes during routines. But one of a really big one I made was basically just that I didn't get the portafilter locked all the way in during an espresso shot, and so the gas, the water was just leaking, and I kind of was just staring at it is this happening? What do I do? And I basically just decided, I was like, hey, I'll just pull another shot. That's what I would do if I was serving customers in a cafe. And so I just stopped the shot and pulled another one, and kind of just tried to fake nothing was wrong. And it turned out that my sensory judges weren't even aware that had happened, which I was extremely grateful for. But also just showed me, I was like, oh, okay, if I make a mistake, it's fine. I'm probably one of the only people that would know it was a mistake unless I really showed it. So it just helped me I think in my practices and things like that, just thinking hey, mistakes are going to happen and it's fine. Just like in the cafe, you make mistakes, you fix it, you move on. And so I just try to have that mentality whenever I'm making mistakes, which is a lot. So
that's great. Let's do Kaley and then Adam.
For mistakes, I think for Brewers Cup, a huge mistake people make before they even present is to not practice compulsory, which I learned my first year. That's 50% of your score, so you have to practice it. So that was something I learned pretty quickly. As far as mistakes go during actual presentation, I usually make speech mistakes. But when you do those, just make sure you repeat the sentence, use the correct word or something close to it, and just move on. I think my best mistake story is during my practice time when I left my pre-wet water inside my decanters and then brewed my coffee over it during my one practice. But that's how I found out I needed to bypass my coffee. So I actually used that recipe for my presentation and won national. So sometimes you learn from mistakes. Yeah.
My first year competing in Austin, I forgot the paragraph about explaining my sig bev, so it came out of nowhere, literally. Uh, and that's something I think about every year during this time. I haven't gotten over that, and I don't think I will. But like how last year actually, I made a mistake and I told a joke wrong, but nobody else. So like kind of like what Andrea was saying, like nobody understands the mistakes you make as much as you do. So just like kind of just keep soldiering on would probably be my biggest tip there.
Awesome. Sara, I would love to hear your thoughts from the place that you stand/run.
Having worked backstage for Barista and Brewers, I think the glaring mistake I see the majority of competitors make is not reading the schedules. So not knowing when to be on site. Because usually, especially from a volunteer team perspective, we need to have like eyes on all the judges, at least like at the start of the workshop day and about 30 minutes before calibration starts, competition day morning. And then for competitors, we need to have eyes on competitors at least a half hour to an hour before their cart to stage time. So usually people are running late or they're in traffic and they don't let us know. Or they misread the schedule, and so they arrive with no time to prepare, or they arrive kind of flustered, and that informs mistakes that could happen in practice or performance and just cause like a lot of unnecessary anxiety. So definitely make sure that you have a firm grasp on what the schedule says, so that way you are where you need to be. And then also, I think, I don't know if it categorizes as a mistake, but it's something I would kind of put in the channel of not accessing the rights you have as a competitor, is asking for help. So if you have things that break, or if something's missing, or if someone hurt your feelings and you don't know how to feel about it, like talking to your stage manager, talking to a competitions representative to address that immediately, because that's something that could in turn affect the success of your performance. And I see that happen a lot and hear about it after the fact. And I think it's just ask me if you're a Brewers Cup competitor. If you're if you're a competitor for Barista, ask your stage manager for them. Any other competitions, there's a great volunteer team behind them. So if anything breaks, if anything's missing, if anything's not working, the best thing you can do is ask. And I categorize that as a mistake. It's not necessarily accessing all the resources you have when you've got a whole volunteer team there to support you.
That's great, Sara. I'm going to stick with you for this next question too. How do you prepare for the unknown variables? And this is from Marvin Duncan. How do you prepare for the unknown variables that happen because of a new location?
Well, first and foremost, Brewers Cup people always trip the breaker. It's just something that I have just accepted as a part of my life, is knowing how electricity works. So I would say from a sort of judge competitor standpoint, one thing I have to think about logistically is making sure that the power works, or we have access to the troubleshooting devices if the power cuts out for some reason, and water. We need to know where we can access more water if for some reason we run out, because usually with equipment, we've got great sponsors. So if something's not working, we have a rep on site that we can grab if something happens. All of our judges calibrate really well on the workshop day, so they're able to address any rules questions or anything that seems kind of out of whack because of of the venue. Like if it's a unique space and the stages are in a different place, and I don't know, something kind of seems out of line. We've got really great judges and, like people like Mike or World Coffee Events reps on site to address anything that might be unique to the venue that could affect the rules. So going into each event, just knowing kind of where the resources are and what tools to put in the tool belt, so to speak. So especially power and water, since those things are, I've heard, helpful to brewing coffee. Those are the things to kind of know where your options are to make sure that you can address them quickly. Because if the power goes out, it could affect not just one competition, but multiple. But yeah.
Awesome. I got a couple, or one from my judges here. This is from Chloe in Charleston. As a judge, do you feel like you've become a better coffee professional through your judging? We'll do Kathy first.
Hi, Chloe. It's good to hear a question from you. I think it has made me a better professional. Maybe not for the reasons that seem obvious, like building your palate and tasting lots of great coffee is like the one that I think of first, but I actually think it's about working with people and all different kinds of people from all different regions who are good at what they do and maybe just a really different way. And I think that is super, super valuable. So being able to be plopped into any random city, meet people for the first time and learn how to work with them has made me a better coffee professional.
Awesome. Mike, what about you?
Yeah, as always, Kathy's very wise, and I completely agree. But the other thing that's been great for me is that judging always puts you in an uncomfortable situation. And whether that's a good or a bad thing, you learn from it. And when it's positive for me, it reinforces that I know what I'm doing. And when it's negative, it tells me that I have something to learn and it's a gap in my knowledge or my experience. So every single competition that I go to, I learn from it, even though I've been to a countless number of competitions. Judging is always still valuable for me.
Awesome. All right, this is one of my, it's a painful question, but it's an important one. This is from Doug in Boston. In the time prior to competition, what did your practice schedule look like and how did you approach each session? Practice for competition is always a very intense thing preparing for it. So I'd love to hear from our competitors what your practice schedules looked like before competition. Sam, you want to go first?
Yes, that's a really great question. I think over the years, what I've been really focused on trying to do is practicing smarter and not harder. So my first barista competition, I was like, it was 2 weeks before competition. I was like, had nothing together. A few of us got together and we were up till like 3 in the morning every night practicing. I would not suggest that. I would try to plan out a schedule. Now, it really depends, like whether you're a barista where you have to go in maybe after your shift, that feels a little more challenging, but be very intentional with your time. So if you're going in after your shift, a couple hours a day is enough. Just doing less run-throughs, but more intentional run-throughs. So leading up to competition in 2018, I practiced almost every day leading up to, like 2 weeks leading up to competition. I've been working on my routine for months in advance, but I would do like 8 run-throughs in a day. And I'd be so tapped by the end and making mistakes all through each run-through and trying to fix it the next one, but making another one. And I was just drained and tired, and it was late and all the things. This last year, I would do maybe 2 run-throughs a day. And they were super intentional. I would actually do a couple mock run-throughs where I wouldn't actually make anything. I do about 5 of those before I even started to do an actual run-through, where I would just talk through my script, do all the motions, get kind of warmed up, and then I would go through and do like 2 very intentional run-throughs. And trying to bring in as many people to watch too, to give you feedback. Or at least, honestly, I felt like this was more useful than like bringing someone who may not understand competition, but videoing yourself. I just prop up my iPhone and video it. And it was very easy for me to pick out, okay, well, I want to change this, I want to change this, I want to change this. But yeah, I would try to eliminate spending hours and hours on end, but spreading it like a couple hours each day and being very intentional.
That's great. T.Ben, I would love to hear from you and also kind of some of the practice advice you give your glitter cat folks.
Yeah, what Sam said is exactly right. Like going in with an intentional plan every time you go to train, like writing down like today I want to find my espresso recipe. What I found helpful is creating a calendar, especially for newer competitors. Like you probably don't have 3 months to be working on these presentations, but it's like even if you break it down to 4 weeks, where week 1. By the end of week 1, you want to have your coffee, maybe have it dialed in to some level, and start being able to think about like how this coffee ties into what you want to be talking about and creating that presentation. At the end of week 2, maybe you have like the first draft of your presentation done, and you can like push your way through a run through, and then like week 3 is like finalizing, or like week 2 could be like milk beverage, and then week 3 is like finalizing presentation. So then week 4, you're doing presentations. Like when we're thinking about trying to get to qualifiers, like make sure you take care of yourself in that, and creating a very precise schedule of what you want to focus each week on. I have found really helpful for me, and that's a lot of what like we're sharing at GlitterCat with newer competitors. And for that, if you ever get like stressed out, or like you feel like suddenly you can't make good espresso, or suddenly like all of your skills, like everything, you just forgot how to make coffee, just leave. Like backflush the machine and like walk out the door, or like call your friend and like have them backflush it for you. I can't emphasize enough how much taking care of yourself will improve every aspect of your competition.
And every aspect of your life as well. Self-care, important. So good. Thank you, T.Ben. Andrea, what about you?
Hey, yeah, practice is such a challenging kind of thing. I usually try to start before the season, like several months in advance, and like I have different areas that I kind of think about. For me, like I write a script word for word, and memorize the entire thing word for word. That doesn't work for everyone, but that's like a whole part of my preparation that I do like at home or like on my lunch break, writing and revising and things like that. When I'm actually practicing with coffee, I usually have skill sets like picked out that I want to work on. So I guess I'm kind of, I try to set myself up so that I never leave a practice frustrated. So I like try to structure my practices so that like whatever my hardest skill set that I need to work on is, or if I'm working on new, like run throughs that are really challenging, that I do those at the beginning, and then I end my session on like a really straightforward note, so that I can walk out feeling confident and feeling like I can't wait to get back in the lab. I usually do all of my like full run throughs and stuff on the weekends, Saturdays and Sundays, which is like probably not what people want to hear, but usually like I know last year leading up to US, like I think in the probably 10 weeks leading up to US, I did like Saturdays and Sundays, just doing full run throughs. I'm a very like private person, so I don't share my script or run throughs with anyone until like the weekend before competition. I'll show it to like 2 people. One of my favorite authors said this thing about like once you show someone something, like the magic has gone out. And so whether that's true or not, it's probably not true, but for me it's true. And so I just like to keep everything really like close to me, and that way when I'm showing it to someone at like the judges, the first competition, it's like they're like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th person to see it. So so it's kind of like what my competition practice life is like. But I really encourage people to just do what works for them. Like I have talked with lots of people about their practice schedules and their preparation. It looks way different than mine, and I think you can be successful. You just have to kind of figure out what works for you.
Awesome. Kaley and Adam.
Say one more thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I just remembered this while Andrea was talking. Practice your setup time. Practice your setup time. Practice your setup time. It's really fast. It's not a lot of time, and it has totally messed me up going into a competition before. So you have like 7 minutes at these qualifiers. Practice that. Every time you do a presentation practice your setup time. That's all I have to say on that.
That is a very good pro tip right there. That's good. Kaley, what was your practice schedule like for the last few years?
Well, for Brewers Cup, it's a little bit different because you have compulsory, which you can start quite early, and that's really helpful because, again, it's 50% of your score. You can always get a mystery coffee, say to your roaster, give me a medium roast or light medium roast, and then practice with that. As T.Ben said, practice your setup time, then practice your competition time, and that will be really helpful. I know that sometimes getting a coffee can be really hard, and I've had the luck of getting a coffee very last minute, but I still like to get a speech ready and do a bunch of mock run-throughs before I get my coffee, and then when I get my coffee and develop a recipe, I'll start doing run-throughs. And that schedule looks like I try not to put hours in, but more run-throughs. So every day I would set a goal to do 3 or 4 compulsory run-throughs, and the next day 3 or 4 open service run-throughs, and then spend about 4 to 5 hours doing run-throughs of both. But I also want to mirror what T.Ben said and say, take care of yourself. It's okay to take a day off if you feel that you can't do it, or 2 days off. And I always would go on a run right after work, right before I'd practice, because, you know, some fitness is really good for mental health. And for me, I needed to do it to feel fine about everything else I was doing. So I'd always prioritize my own health before I would start competition. I think that's really important to remember.
Awesome. What about you, Adam?
I am an extremely organized person, so I have pretty much down to like 15-minute intervals of about 6 weeks prior to when I want to start competing. Everything I want to do, like down to like me sleeping, what movies I'm watching which day, and like just like minor details. And then like for each competition session, or like practice section rather, I'm trying to like fix a skill or something that I saw went wrong. And then like the last week to 10 days before competition is kind of like tech week, in which like I'm actively working on everything. Like I'm actively thinking about setup time. I'm actively doing run throughs and seeing what went wrong. And like just I do a lot of mental like envisioning of what I want my competition routine to look like, what I want to sound like, where I want to walk, how I want music to sound. And I also, like, with respect to self-care, like I meditate every day, which has helped me stay calm and stay focused on what I'm doing next. So like I would echo everybody, like have a purpose, do everything with intention, and take care of yourself.
That's great. Adam, I'm actually going to stick with you for a second. This will be our last question, and I would love to get everyone's final thoughts. So the last question is from Chicago, and it's how do you balance focusing on service, the coffee itself, and the message of your presentation? How do you remember one and not totally drop the other 3 things?
How do you do it at work? I mean, that's the answer to that question. Like, to me, coffee and like being in coffee and being in customer service, like I do coffee because like other people think I'm good at it. I don't necessarily think I am, but I'm always thinking about all 3 of those things at once. Like I'm always thinking about what my message is, and I'm always thinking about why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm always thinking about like how can I give the best service possible. So like that's a hard question for me to answer because those are all 3 things that are always front of mind for me.
Awesome. Kaley, what about you?
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear. Could you repeat the question?
Sure, no problem. So the question is, how do you balance focusing on service, the coffee itself, the message of your presentation, and how do you kind of remember one and not drop the other things?
Like I said before, I think you really have to feel what you're saying. Anything you're presenting, the coffee you're brewing, the message you want to send, if you care about it all and genuinely feel it, it's really no problem. And yeah, it's like Adam said, it's what we do, and it's just kind of competition is a representation of that, but just presented in like a fancy form, basically.
Sarah, what you thinking?
I've never competed before. This is my disclaimer. But I would also say I see very often a lot of competitors struggling to sort of make the most of just their 10 to 15 minutes on stage, when I would say 90% of what matters to be a representative of the competition in your national body happens with other competitors and backstage, and even just kind of like mingling around. Like, people know you're competing, even if it's at just a qualifying level. If they know that you're a barista competitor, if you're backstage interacting with other competitors or coaches or volunteers, how you conduct yourself matters a lot. And so that message that you're trying to carry on stage is important, and it is important when you have a microphone in your face, but it's also important carrying that message backstage as well, because it kind of devalues what you're saying if you're kind of the worst backstage and people can see that, especially since we're preparing people to represent the US at a world level. It is important for the US to be a collaborative entity, to represent like our issues and our ideas well. So in a way that is an open dialogue. So I do think it is important to try and balance those things on stage, but it's also important to try and balance those things just in your presence on site at the event as a competitor.
Love that. So good. Sam, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, for sure. I would say the biggest, like, something that could be actually like helpful is getting your technicals down, like having every motion just super down, so you can do it in your sleep. Sorry, I think my computer's dinging. But getting your technicals down so you can do it in your sleep, because you have, depending on the competition, you have such a little amount of time to share your message and this coffee with your judges, and you want all of your attention to be focused on them. So being able to not even have to think about, oh, am I tamping correctly, or am I starting my shot like immediately after putting my portafilter in? I can be engaged fully with the judges while I'm doing those things. And I think a lot of this goes into the preparation too. Is whatever you're talking about, I feel like your idea that you're presenting, you should constantly be thinking about it. Like, what does it mean off the stage? What does it mean on the stage? And constantly be thinking about it. So when you do get up there, it's a very genuine experience, and because how you communicate that's going to completely change the experience that the judges get. So being able to have that process all the way through on and off the stage, so when you get up there, you're prepared. So all three things, nothing goes by the wayside.
I'm going to get to Andrea and T.Ben in a second as well, but I'm going to put Mike on the spot because I feel like I have heard a really good answer to this kind of question from him before. Mike, what do you think?
I hope I can reproduce a good answer for you. I think it's practicing and getting comfortable. And this is like presenting anything, just speaking in front of everybody, where I have to get comfortable enough with what I'm saying so that I don't have to stress about it when I'm up on stage, and that allows my personality to come out. And that's the thing that I think about the most. That helps me when I'm doing public speaking and talking, is I need something that grounds me. For me, I need to have humor. I need to make people laugh. So I need to plan something straight away so that I can make somebody laugh, and then I can focus on those other things, or else I'm just too much in my head thinking, and I'm not in the moment. So it's like preparation, but also for me, planning on something that I know grounds me.
Love it. Andrea, what about you? Do we still have Andrea? We can skip to T.Ben real quick.
So for me, it's I have a lot to say on this. I'm trying to like distill it down. Balancing customer service and coffee quality. Ultimately, like you're in a coffee competition, and the majority of your points are coming from how your coffee tastes. Kind of like Sam was saying, coffee competitions are frequently won on tech. If you have clean, precise, and accurate technical scores, that's going to come out in the extraction. Your espresso is going to pull the way you want it to. It's going to have the flavors that you're calling out on it, and they're just going to score higher. So getting that and practicing that and reaching out to people to help, like if you need to help navigating, like how can you distribute your coffee with or without a distribution tool, things like that. And so finding a way to really nail home that tech, and then kind of like how to navigate those mistakes. So cleaning up, re-pulling a shot, having spare shots on stage, or like spare like coffee on stage if you're using an EK. And then finding how you want to serve your judges. What was passionate for me the last 2 years is I didn't want bussers. I wanted to bus the tables myself. Sorry, I'm driving. That was a motorcycle. Well, I'm riding. I'm not driving.
You're good. No worries.
Driving. Anyway, and I really worked in busing into my presentation, and it turned into something that I was so excited about that at times it became too hard to have in. But by like going through those motions constantly, it became an integral part of my presentation, and I could talk through it. So finding how you want to serve your judges. And then the final thing I want to say on it is, especially for newer competitors, when you're looking at a lot of these finals presentations, a lot of us have been competing for years. I think like this is my 6th year, and there's a lot of skill that's developed year over year in talking while making coffee. And it is 100% okay to have silence in your presentation. If you need to focus on a level TAM or like distribution or steaming or pouring cappuccinos, you don't need to talk. Find what the score sheet's saying, create your theme around that, and distill your words so you're able to focus on those technical skills. You don't always need this huge elaborate story, especially at the qualifier level. Create this presentation, find your passion, and deliver it. But for those 10 minutes, you don't need to be talking for 9 minutes and 59 seconds. Also, I start all my presentations with Disney music and end it with Disney music, and that makes me happy. So just find a way to be happy.
I love it. Andrea, I would love for you to answer that same question, and then we'll also kind of do a quick round of final thoughts from our wonderful panelists here.
Can you guys hear me? My computer's giving me a weird sound. Okay, cool.
Can hear you great.
Thanks. This is a really hard question to answer. I've been trying to figure out what my answer is for it. And I think my first thought is that you should definitely be presenting something from your point of view that's really valuable to you and your own community. I think that the most successful presentations and the ones that I admire are from a personal viewpoint. And I think when you're coming at it like that, that you remember the service, you remember the theme. And then I just want to echo what other people said with those coffee skill sets. You just like have to really nail those out in your practice time. For me, I build my presentation so that I'm during the most challenging skill sets or parts of my service, I'm not talking or not doing other things so that it's like set up for me to be successful. So I think that's really all I have to add on that. So
that's great. Do you have any final words of wisdom for folks?
Yeah, I think just remember when you're going to these things that the things you're going to experience and the reasons why you're there are like so much bigger than just that time that you're up on the stage giving your presentation. The entire experience is about building community, creating friendships, pushing coffee forward. So don't put all of your hope and your thoughts and your feelings into that presentation time, because there's so much value that you can get out of it, even if you get up there and you don't do as well as you want, which I will just have to say that probably everyone on this call will agree that they've never done fully as well as they would have wanted to. It's just going to happen, and things are going to happen, and try to be open in your heart and in your mind to what you're supposed to be hearing and learning while you're there, and you'll feel successful at the end of the weekend, like regardless of how you place or how you did on the stage.
Love it. So good. Sarah, what about you? Any final thoughts, words of wisdom? If you can find your unmute button. You're getting there. You're getting close. There you go.
Computer is way too fancy for me. My final advice would be pretty similar to Andrea's. We talked about this earlier, actually, in the group out that way, is to know sort of what your individual goals are. I think I see a lot of competitors beat themselves up a little bit too much when they don't get first place, or even if they do get first place. And I think knowing that success looks different for a lot of different businesses, a lot of different competitors, a lot of different competitions, and also understanding that how you represent yourself backstage does matter. And so just being conscious of the idea of being a representative, being an ambassador for the competition, being an ambassador for your community, for your business, for your national body, whatever level of competition you're at, just making sure that you're setting goals that are attainable, and also even just like big goals, so that way you're not beating yourself up too much, and enjoying the experience, because competitions can be a very special experience.
Totally. Kaley, what about you?
I think everyone's bringing up really good points, but one I want to bring up is allowing yourself to be uncomfortable with discomfort. Competition is a pretty uncomfortable thing. We're not used to, for Brewers Cup, brewing 3 coffees at once while giving a 10-minute speech. So you're already going into it knowing that it's going to be really awkward, but allowing yourself to get out there, try new things, and know that you may do really well or you may fail, and being okay with any result is really important, because the experience is really valuable.
That's great. Adam, what about you?
I'm not sure any words I have are wise, because I think you need to be wise to have wise words. But like, kind of know why you're competing, and don't have that reason be to win. Because like, if you're competing to win, you're setting yourself up to fail. Because like, for barista, there's 130 competitors total, so you're giving yourself a 1 in 130 chance to succeed. And you wouldn't set yourself up to fail at work. You wouldn't set any of your employees up to fail. You wouldn't set any of your friends up to fail. So why are you doing it to yourself? So like, have a point as to why you're competing, and like, keep that in mind every single practice session when you're writing your routine. That's what I would do. Just like that, have a reason why you're competing, believe in that reason, and execute it.
That's great. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, everybody's saying amazing things, but I think for me, I don't know, there's so many things. I would say just believe in yourself, which that's really hard to do sometimes. I don't think I fully believe that I could win even going into finals. And it's not all about winning. But I think competition kind of gives us an opportunity to really challenge ourselves to believe that we can be better. And whether you win or you don't win, you always come out on top, because I mean, there's been years where, like 2018, I missed finals by half a point, and that was the most devastating thing. But I took home so much value from that, from the relationships to the experience and the people, and kind of having to deal with those feelings of like, I messed up. What if I would have done this different? But each year, setting a goal for what you want to achieve, what you want to do better, and just believing that you can reach those goals, and surrounding yourself with a team that believes in you too.
Awesome. T.Ben, what about you? Final thoughts?
Pretty calibrated with everyone else. But find your quirk. Be yourself. I'm a weirdo, and the more I express my weirdness and goofiness, like the happier I feel, the happier I am about what I'm presenting on stage. I tell all the glitter cats this: don't cater yourself to the score sheet, but cater the score sheet to yourself. If you want to do something, make it happen. Like, be proud of what you're doing on that stage, because it's pretty dang amazing that you're taking that step and you're being yourself. So be goofy, have fun, just be yourself.
Awesome. Mike, what about you?
So I agree with everyone who's talking about setting goals. And for me, I need to set goals that are both personal and goals that are out of my control. So setting a goal of winning is out of your control, but I can set up intermediate goals for myself that I can actually achieve and are within my control. So that's really important to me. And then the other thing to remember that I always go back to is the movie Cool Runnings. And the quote from the coach is, a gold medal is a wonderful thing, but if you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it.
So good. And now Kathy has to follow that with the final word. Kathy, final thoughts?
Oh, so tough. I think I have two final thoughts. One for competitors, which I actually thought about while watching Jenna compete, Jenna from Counterculture, New York, that, what you do on stage ripples on forever and ever in places that you do not know and you will not see. And I feel that way when I watch Jenna compete. So I think that's true for every competitor. You don't know who you're going to affect by what you say into that microphone, and that is your time, and you can do whatever you'd like with it. And then to judges, I'd say keep your mind open and be ready to learn something you aren't expecting to learn. But that's all I got.
That's so good. Guys, this has been so awesome. Thank you so much to all of our virtual panelists for taking the time to do this. Thank you for all of those of you guys that are joining us in the training centers. This has been recorded. We're going to throw this up online. So if you have some friends that wanted to participate and weren't able to and would like to watch, they will be able to do it. It'll be out on the interwebs. So thanks, everyone. And y'all all have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.